Most people imagine killers as strangers, outsiders, monsters who arrive suddenly and destroy. He lives in a single violent moment, but the most dangerous kind don't arrive at all. They're already there. They grow up inside the house. They share meals with you. They learn, slowly, that conflict doesn't get resolved, it gets removed. Brookey West didn't wake up one day and decide to kill her mother. By the time Christine Smith disappeared, Brooke had already learned something far more disturbing. That when someone stood between her and peace, that person eventually vanished. And she had learned that lesson early. Brooke's family history didn't begin with love or safety. It began with survival. Christine Smith was born during the Great Depression into a family so desperate that childhood itself was treated as currency. Her parents sold her body before she was old enough to understand what a childhood was supposed to be. By 13, she was out of school. By 16, she was married, not for love, but for escape. The marriage became another prison. Her husband continued the exploitation her parents had started. Christine learned, over and over, that the people closest to you are often the ones who hurt you the most. Eventually, she ran. But trauma doesn't disappear when you escape it. It mutates. It waits. Her second husband, Leroy Smith, carried his own darkness. As a child, he watched his drunken father murder his mother with an axe. At 5 years old, he learned that violence wasn't just possible, it was permanent. Then his sisters abandoned him on a bus with a note saying he was an orphan. No goodbye, no explanation, just removal. Leroy spent 11 years homeless, raised by an alcoholic woman in a tent. By adulthood, stability was something he had never experienced, only authority. He joined the army, then the police force, not because he believed in justice, but because power felt like safety. Christine and Leroy didn't heal each other, they amplified each other. Alcohol, drugs, jealousy, rage. The house became a place where fear was normal, where screaming meant nothing was wrong. It meant everything was familiar. Their children, Brooke and Travis, grew up emotionally abandoned long before they were ever physically left alone. By 7, Brooke was already a caretaker, protecting her younger brother while their parents disappeared into days-long drinking binges. Bruises were routine. Hunger was expected. Love was conditional and unpredictable. In that environment, Brooke learned 3 critical lessons. First, adults cannot be trusted. Second, pain is inevitable. Third, and most important, power belongs to whoever controls the outcome. When Leroy lost his police job for corruption, the family drifted through cheap motels. Brooke begged strangers for food while her parents partied. When they returned, they beat her for surviving without permission. Eventually, even school became unsafe. Other children sensed what predators always do: weakness. No one protected Brooke, so she learned to protect herself emotionally by hardening. When Christine finally went to prison for attempted murder, pulling a gun on a lover in a bar, Leroy made a decision that revealed how little he understood his children. He told Brooke her mother was dead, then forced her to repeat the lie to her brother. That moment mattered, because Brooke didn't just lose her mother. She learned that truth itself was a tool, something you could bend if it made life easier. After dumping the children at an orphanage, Leroy accidentally made the best decision of their lives. For the first time, Brooke experienced calm, predictability, care without strings attached. She began to understand what normal might look like. And then Christine came back. Fresh out of prison, she demanded her children returned. Travis screamed. He physically fought being taken. His instincts were correct. Nothing had changed. Christine tried sobriety briefly, then returned to alcohol. Leroy continued cheating. The chaos resumed. But Brooke was no longer a helpless child. She was watching, learning patterns. As a teenager, she did something remarkable. She survived long enough to graduate. She tried to escape by joining the army, but structure couldn't heal what rage had replaced. She came back home and found the family fractured again. Travis spiraled into drugs and homelessness. Christine found religion. LaRue found a cult obsession. And Brooke was left suspended between belief systems, loyalty conflicts, and unresolved anger. She gravitated toward her father's worldview, not because of Satanism, but because it offered control, ritual, power over unseen forces, a way to explain why pain followed her. Brooke didn't want connection anymore. She wanted distance. Marriage seemed like escape. She married Ray, had a child, and immediately felt trapped again. Motherhood triggered something deep and unbearable. Dependency, responsibility, loss of control. When she decided she no longer wanted to be a mother, she didn't negotiate, she escalated. Soon after, Ree's elderly grandmother answered her door and was shot in the chest by a masked man. The message worked. The baby was given up. Brooke removed the obstacle. This pattern repeated. Back living with Christine, their relationship devolved into mutual resentment. They couldn't live together and couldn't separate. They shoplifted together, picked up men together, fed each other's worst instincts. Then Brooke changed briefly. She got a good job, bought a Jaguar, bought a house. Money gave her what she'd always wanted, leverage. At AA meetings, she met Howard St. John, vulnerable, recovering, emotionally open. Within weeks, they were married. He moved in with Brooke and Christine, and immediately became the new fault line. Christine hated him. Brooke resented her mother. The house became a psychological pressure cooker. Brooke's solution wasn't therapy. It was segregation. She bought an RV and forced her mother to live in it. But money was slipping again. And Brooke, faced with financial collapse, returned to what she knew best, deception paired with risk. She convinced Howard to burn the Jaguar for insurance money. When detectives questioned him, paranoia took over. In Brooks's mind, betrayal was always just a matter of time. She shot her husband in the neck. He survived, and worse, he forgave her. That forgiveness was fatal. 2 weeks later, Howard was found dead in a national forest, shot multiple times, a plastic bag over his face. Once again, Brooke stood near the center of suspicion. And once again, evidence fell just short. She had learned something critical. You don't need to be innocent. You just need to be untouchable. After Howard's death, Brooke invited Christine back into her life. They moved to Las Vegas. Christine flourished. Friends, church, purpose. Brooke unraveled. Her therapist concluded that Christine was the emotional trigger, the source of her distress. Brooke didn't argue. In February 1998, Christine vanished. When friends came looking, Brooke calmly explained her mother had moved to California. No goodbye, no forwarding address, just gone. 3 years later, the truth surfaced in a Las Vegas storage unit. Inside a sealed barrel was what remained of Christine Smith, decomposed beyond recognition, organs liquefied, head wrapped in plastic. Forensic entomology told the real story. No blissy, no early insect activity, which meant one thing. Christine had not been placed in that barrel after death. She had been placed there alive. Brooke's story collapsed. Fingerprints, social security fraud, lies layered over years. At trial, the prosecution didn't argue rage, they argued control. Every time Brooke felt threatened, abandoned, or exposed, someone disappeared. Her husband, her mother, likely her brother. The jury agreed. Brookey West was sentenced to life without parole. Years later, she tried to walk out of prison disguised as a visitor. Even then, she believed she could remove one final obstacle. She was wrong. Brooke was not born a monster. She was shaped by neglect, violence, and abandonment. But many people survived trauma without becoming predators. What made Brooke different was choice. At every turning point, she learned not to endure pain, but to eliminate its source. And once that lesson took hold, everyone around her was in danger.